what I have.
Oh, was that for me?
That is for you.
Oh, the power brakes for the Jimmy.
Yes, the Jimmy.
Let's see what's in it. Master, line kit, and the hydraulic power booster. This is the part that makes it all work. Thanks, girl. That gives me plenty to do today.
You're welcome.
Ooh, shiny. Be the cleanest thing on this truck.
Why is Chris talking to himself? Well, it's because you can't read his mind, and we've sort of gotten into the habit of narrating what we're doing for the film crew.
All right, I gotta find a good place to mount this. But I want to keep it high up on the truck. Looks like I'm gonna have to change the voltage regulator, but I was gonna have to move it anyway. I'm gonna have to put it in a Faraday cage so that it survives the EMP pulse. The newer alternators have a regulator internal in the alternator, but the older trucks don't. They have a separate one. The ones with the separate voltage regulator are easier to EMP proof because you don't have to EMP proof the whole alternator, just the voltage regulator, because the alternator is pretty much just a dummy at this point. The customer put a much larger tire than stock on it. And anytime you do that, you really need to upgrade your brakes. Because if you were to like cut it and lay it out flat, the bigger the diameter, the longer that distance is. We call that feet per revolution. Some people call it revs per mile.
There are two ways to increase brake power: larger rotors or stronger squeezing force. Justin loves his wheels and tires, so we can't change the rotors. There isn't enough vacuum pressure on the Jimmy to apply enough squeezing force. We avoid Hydro Boost systems that pull off the power steering pump and split the power between brakes and steering. So we're going with an electric hydraulic brake system that will adequately increase the squeezing force on the rotors without compromising steering.
Our new electric booster puts more pressure on the lines than a conventional booster assembly does because it uses a hydraulic pump instead of just a vacuum diaphragm. And that hydraulic pump runs at a much higher pressure. The booster out of the way. It's just a bazillion years old. This was probably put in there from the factory. Normally you would just take the bracket off, take the booster off the bracket, but I gotta modify the bracket. Woohoo! So you really have to make sure that the lines are right. We always check them before we go any farther on power brake systems. Oh wow, you can see the rust. This is basically like a spring that covers the brake line that protects it, but you can see where those springs are completely impacted with rust. And if I try to reuse those, it's gonna leak just as sure as I'm standing here.
One of the problems with Justin's Jimmy is a moment arm force that we're trying to get it to stop. So I'm going to use a man with his arm sticking straight out and a tire. Both of these things are trying to move in that direction. So if I'm trying to make this man drop his arm, if I apply a 20-pound force very close to the moment, which would, in the tire it would be here, it's going to take me a lot of force to bring his arm down. On the other hand, if I bring a 20-pound force and put it on his fingertips, this guy's gonna get really unhappy really fast because I'm gonna win every time with a 20-pound force. So when I apply this to a brake system, the same thing happens. If I've got a little tiny rotor in here, I have to apply a significant amount of force close to the center in order to make that tire stop. If I can make the rotor bigger and I can apply the force further out, I have a much easier time bringing that tire, and in this case then the truck that's on it, to come to a stop because I've moved my moment arm out. That's the challenge I've got with the 71 Jimmy, is that he wants to keep the little tiny 11-inch rotors, and I've got a great big tire and vehicle to stop, so I'm not able to use the advantage that I want, which is this advantage. I unfortunately have to do it just by applying tons of force to it, and we're going to go from about a 1,200 PSI force to about a 3,000 PSI force to try and compensate for the fact that I'm not allowed to put a bigger rotor. What's happening?
Making pretty good progress.
Okay.
I am going to have to run all new brake lines, though. I don't have any choice.
What about our torque boxes? Have we taken a look at those yet? Are we going to cut them out or repair them in place?
We're probably going to repair them in place.
All right. I'm going to go look at a few other cars, but thank you.
Yeah, no problem, Chief. I'm going to get back to work.
Chris can replace those brake lines after Andrew does the support box repairs. I have a personal story of a truck that I had to move with bad brake lines, and so when I see a vehicle come in here with corroded brake lines, it brings me back to the time where my dad called me up and he wanted me to try and get his old Ford F-350 fixed up. I went up to Vermont and knew that it was beyond anything I could do locally, so I said I'll bring it to Virginia to the shop and work on it. Only the first thing I noticed was about a mile into the road trip, the brakes completely gave out. I blew a brake line and I climbed under the truck to find out that it was rotted out. So I went to Napa and I bought a brake line repair kit, just something to get me home. And I installed a brake line repair kit, and less than a mile from the Napa, I blew the second brake line in the truck. So I went back to that same Napa without any brakes, bought every brake line repair kit they had, which was about 7 or 8 of them left in stock. I don't think I'd made it 15 miles from the Napa before I'd used up every single brake line kit, and at that point realized that there was really nothing I could do. So I did something very chancy. I used a calculated risk. He had a 4-speed transmission and a good working emergency brake. So I had no choice but to depart in that vehicle from Bethel, Vermont, and drive it to Norfolk, Virginia on the interstate with no hydraulic brakes. All I had was my ability to downshift, and if I really needed to in emergency, my left foot was on that brake pedal the whole way. I wouldn't recommend anybody do this, but it was a way to make a truck get somewhere in an absolute emergency. And when I find clients that bring their brakes in here and they have sort of similar condition, rotted out lines, I think back to that day that I had to move his truck, and I don't want them to go through what I went through, so we're gonna fix it and replace all the lines right up front so they never have to deal with that sort of stuff. Chris is supposed to be working on the brakes of the 71 Jimmy, and instead he's on the orange Blossom, and I'm not sure why. What's going on?
Well, the Jimmy's in bad shape. Yeah.
The brakes?
No, the torque boxes. When
Andrew's supposed to weld them up.
Yeah, when Andrew got in there and somebody just made some very elaborate covers.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
Come here. Let's see why the doors aren't shutting, right?
Yeah, that's exactly why the doors won't shut.
Yeah, looks like the A-pillar supports.
It's not even rust flakes holding hands anymore. It's rust flakes that have sailed, away.
These boxes are so rusty that as you shift them around, the door just moves up and down. There's no support there.
We can't even move forward?
Somebody went through a lot of trouble to hide that.
I still should have found it. That sucks. There's no point going forward. I know.
That's right. And I'm sort of stuck, so.
The entire build just changed from doing mechanical work to now doing a complete metal restructuring of this body. I hope you've learned a bit about brakes, and I will never again do what I did in Vermont to get the truck down here. Guys, we're going to show you the whole build, start to finish, on these Monday releases. Please click the like and subscribe buttons, comment and share on social media, and let people know exactly what we're doing.